Excellent, and welcome to the TAD Summit online conference. This is our final session of 2025, and it's really, I think, a very important session because, of course, the important standard, vCon. That's the reason we have Thomas here, the CTO for vConic, but also all the work Matthew has been doing around industrial processes and the importance of vCon in capturing all the human conversations, all that tacit knowledge that we keep losing time after time after time again. And that's one of the reasons we have Karel here, because he is helping organizations solve the tacit knowledge problem using AI. So again, I think we've got a great lineup, people. I'm just going to hand over to Matthew, and he's going to present around the role of vCon in industrial processes. Over to you.
Hey, thank you very much, Alan, to be back in the hot seat as well. And it's quite an honor and a privilege to join such incredible figures and key personalities in the whole thing. Thomas, you're the man for having brought us vCon. And Carl, I salute you for doing all the great work you are doing with Voxist and being able to capture audio and transcribe it and do some extremely powerful things. And so I think we're at a confluence of something great, and I am super excited for 2026 and what lies ahead. You know, the thing is that we've digitized machines incredibly well. Okay, we've gone through a number of waves of automation, bringing computer control into factories and into process industry and into utilities. All right, we've also, I think, we've taken advantage of the information age and the fact that today we take the internet for granted. We take telecommunications capabilities for granted. We know how to pick up the phone and call someone, even if that feels old-fashioned. We know that there are other ways that we can also communicate using apps that run over the internet. Okay, so you know what? We take a lot of this stuff for granted. We think that, third normal form for databases and, being able to have schemas and information models, that this is a great way for us to organize data and information. Okay, but we've done almost nothing to preserve how humans think around machines and information systems, and even the ability to do, telecommunications, to actually be a user. So we've done nothing to preserve how humans think about this. Okay. And so if we think about an industrial site today, industrial sites are full of data. We've got process historians, we've got alarms, we've got dashboards. We generate tons of KPIs. Okay. And a lot of focus today is on, again, trying to, create even better dashboards, right? Build better mousetraps to drive things like OEE, so overall equipment effectiveness, which is kind of like this holy grail mega indicator, which again hides so much complexity. But yet, when something breaks, what or actually fixes it?
Yeah.
It's the phone call. Yeah. It's the radio exchange. It's the Teams call at 3 a.m. And it's the vendor explaining why the workaround worked the last time. Yeah. And this is the paradox, right? We've optimized machines, but not human knowledge flow. Yeah. And that gap is becoming dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sharing some slides now.
Yep.
If that is visible on my screen.
It is. It's here, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Okay. So why this matters. Okay. So we've got three things which are colliding. All right. So we've got aging workforces. A huge amount of operational expertise is retiring, and what's inside people's heads is not written down anywhere. Yeah. Not enough that sits up here is actually encoded or stored as, information in a system. The second is that cybersecurity and the risks around critical infrastructure and the integrity of utilities, process, and manufacturing have changed the game. They've changed the rules. So we've got standards like IEC 62443. We have here in Europe, we have the Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA. We have NIS2, which gives us a framework and a directive for having better traceability and evidence. Okay. And the key word here is evidence. Right? How can you prove that you have defended things correctly, that you have put the right countermeasures in place? Yeah. And then the third thing is that we're deploying AI into environments that don't explain themselves. This is a bit of a, oh man, we can talk all we like about agentic this and agentic that, but if we don't have explanations that are part of that entire set of information and data, and at least have some way of being able to contextualize and have some knowledge awareness, we have systems that can tell us what happened, but not why someone made the decision.
Exactly.
And so you can't secure, sustain, or modernize something you no longer understand. And we run a big risk of falling into this trap of modernizing stuff and no one understands it. Okay. And that means I've got a massive gap somewhere in my abstractions between what I see and perceive and what's really happening underneath.
Yeah.
So if we look at this whole thing, right, of the real operating system in a factory, it's all comes down to people talking to each other. We've got shift handovers, radio calls, WhatsApp messages. I remember 5 years ago doing a project in a refinery, and it really struck me then that WhatsApp had actually become a key operational communications channel and was starting to replace Tetra two-way radio, trunk radio. And seeing people walking around on the refinery floor in the plant with ATEX smartphones using WhatsApp in order to stay in touch with the control room, with contractors, and in particular with people that did not have the device that was for internal company purposes. See, what I think is very interesting here is that we also have things that go beyond just one enterprise's boundary and domain.
Yeah.
Okay. So being able to have interactions across different actors within an ecosystem is important.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these things where we have troubleshooting sessions, commissioning meetings, toolbox talks, none of that information and data lives inside historians, maintenance management systems, manufacturing execution systems. And as we are moving into better convergence for all of this industrial data flow, none of this is inside something called the unified namespace.
Yeah.
It's stuff that ends up being ephemeral. It just evaporates. And so we end up with data without meaning and events without explanations and alarms without context.
Yeah.
And this isn't a technology failure. This is a failure of memory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time for me to introduce vCons. And it kind of feels weird because, Thomas, you're the guy that introduced us to the vCon concept. Okay. But this talk that we're recording today is really about bringing the vCon story and the vCon concept to a very different audience, right? Folks involved in industrial automation and process control, right, are not familiar with virtualized conversations. Okay. And I think what I want to be clear about up front is that vCons is not call recording, it's not surveillance, and it's not monitoring people. One of the concerns that we have as we move into digitized operations and more augmented, highly connected and interconnected manufacturing and process industry is that there's a concern that we're going to be implementing a sort of a mini surveillance state within the factory, on the factory floor. And this isn't about the surveillance.
Yeah.
Think of it this way, right? If recording a phone call is like storing raw sensor readings, so let's say I'm measuring temperature or pressure. So recording the call is like recording that raw sensor reading. And the vCon is like publishing a contextualized event, right? So where I might have 20 as my temperature, my raw meat reading, I need to actually give it a unit of measurement. I need to be able to say, this is 20 degrees Celsius, okay? But that's not enough. We need to know, is that too hot? Is it too cold? It's compared to what baseline, right? Is this too high, too low? And when did that happen? When was that particular reading taken? So think of vCon in this way, right? It's a contextualized event that can explain who was involved, as in roles, what was discussed, when it happened, what asset or what topic it was related to, and under what governance rules does this fall? So, if we think about some more sophisticated industrial protocols that are attempting to apply an information model, for me, vCon is to human dialogue what OPCUA, the Objects for Process Control Unified Architecture, is to machine interoperability. Now, there are going to be some folks in my network and people watching this call that are going to be saying, why did you speak about OPCUA first? You should have spoken about MQTT Sparkplug. But anyway, look, we're not here to have protocol wars. And this is the great thing about vCons is vCon is not a protocol.
Yep.
It's not a protocol. All right. And the way that you could implement vCons will, again, there are multiple ways of doing it. This is the beauty of having, and Thomas, again, I salute you for this, of having brought vCons into the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. We need to be driving more industrial automation, standardization through bodies like the Internet Engineering Task Force, because again, it is focused on rough consensus, running code, and maximizing interworking and interoperability. These things have served the internet space and actually telecoms as an extension very, very, very well. And I think it behooves us to look at the same when it comes to initiatives that touch on connectivity between machines, people, plant, process, and again, people, plant, and process. Hold
exactly.
on.
Excellent. No.
Running ahead of myself. Anyway, so vCons turn conversations into structured operational knowledge.
Yeah.
So if we look at moving from raw audio, which is where obviously I'm on the phone or I'm having a Teams call, I'm having a WhatsApp conversation, all right? So what do we do to actually turn this into some kind of actionable intelligence? Okay. So we've got the audio recording. We've obviously got the way of turning that into something which is searchable and to structure it.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, when we apply this into manufacturing and industrial automation, we obviously want to be able to relate and link it into some kind of topic classification so that it can be linked to events which are either in the OT domain, so that's my process control and automation domain, or in my IT domain, which is where manufacturing execution and enterprise resource planning sit. Okay. what again makes vCon very powerful is that we can build in access control rules and permissions. It's designed with permissions in mind. And this is key because, again, if we want to come back to our obligation to apply good cybersecurity practice, we need to have role and attribute-based access control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, if we look at where this flow is going to work, we're going to obviously have the ability to capture raw dialogue. And we're going to be able to take that raw dialogue and apply natural language processing. So this is where Carl has a great role to play with Voxit, is that by applying NLP, all right, and again, by taking that language processing that happens on the recording and being aware when I'm doing that with other events that are live or have just preceded this particular conversation, all right, I now have the ability to encode situational awareness in my system. And then that is obviously going to allow us to feed in some situationally aware metadata with links back to original source recordings. This gives us our link to our evidence and our traceability. And then that can be exposed through to applications.
Cool.
So I'm wondering if it's perhaps a good idea to take a little pause before we get into some of the other architectural pieces and dive into the link between vCons and unified namespace, and maybe open up and stress test it. Thomas, Carl, Alan, fire away, bring the guns out. Tell me if this is completely ridiculous.
Well, I mean, if you go back to your previous slide, and this is exactly what we are building. So we've been in the business more on the bottom part, which is capturing and then transforming speech into text, so you can use some NLP. And then what we've been doing over the last almost 2 years now, and that we are launching right now this month with a big Fortune 100 company, is the third level, which is how do you use that in a enriched knowledge way. Mm-hmm. So what happened originally, they contacted us because they were doing manually that work. So they were interviewing people to ask them questions and to try to get their knowledge. And then we were just transcribing that conversation between two humans and trying to extract from that conversation piece of knowledge. But that wouldn't fly because it doesn't scale for a large company if you have to manually interview all those experts. And so what we've built now is, this enriched knowledge, but in a loop way, where we take knowledge, and based on that knowledge, we use AI to figure out what's the missing part. Yeah. What are the questions you should ask the experts? And then we do those interviews to ask the expert about, how did you do it last time when it didn't work like it's supposed to in the manual? And then, the expert will say, oh, well, yeah, 10 years ago, I had this problem actually because of this and that, and that's how I deal with it. And then you capture that knowledge, re-inject it. Mm-hmm. So it's stored, and it is architecturally well structured, and you keep going. Yeah. So that's what we've been building, which is really look like the part that you're doing. Well, but right now it's mostly people based, and I think what's really interesting in what you're discussing is how we can link that to more machine knowledge, which we don't yet capture in our system.
Yeah, because a lot of that kind of is tucked in or hidden inside process historians and, maybe the best you're going to get is some kind of Excel spreadsheet report that's been extracted from some of these databases that exist. I think being able to, again, link up, right, the NLP side of things, and this is where vCons are going to absolutely shine, with live real-time data, but also the taxonomy that we apply. And this comes back to this whole concept of the namespace for a factory or an industrial operation. But again, you could also, I think, take this across the entire enterprise. It doesn't just need to be a factory floor characteristic. It's just that we've got to organize how machines, right, sit within some kind of process. I've got raw material coming in, I'm going to be applying some processing, and I'm going to be taking finished goods out. That's the very basic workflow and process, and having that in some kind of organized namespace where machine data has its place, right? Having the link with vCon in this unified namespace, I think, is going to help what you do, Carl, with your clients, because this will effectively, again, provide additional context to help with enriching that NLP process.
Unfortunately, guys, I need to jump into indeed a client meeting, but I will watch the end, and I'm looking forward to hear more about Thomas, how you see things, and hopefully we can continue offline.
Excellent. Thank you so much,
Thank
Carol.
you, Carol.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Ciao.
Okay, Thomas, your turn.
Well, I think Matthew's nailed it, and I think this is a wonderful example of what I think is the best part of vCons for me, and that is it destroys data silos.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people who I work with who are mostly in the contact center space, what I would tell them is, what you don't understand is the only people today who can actually listen to what happened are in the contact center. And the companies that develop the equipment for contact centers think they know what you want to listen to and why, and analyze it for you. How could any major contact center even think about doing this as a product offering? They couldn't. It's too far outside their experience.
Yeah.
But it's not far outside of people's experience, and dialogues are everywhere.
Exactly.
And they're important everywhere. And so by breaking down the silos and letting the data travel, you enable a million use cases that no one could have thought of. And they're all just amazing. And this is just a great example of it. It's just something that we could not have done in data silos. And now, because the vCon destroys them, we can. It's a really great example. I love this work. It's great.
Fantastic, Thomas. Thank you. So I think it's a great moment now to just go in and talk about where vCons will fit in terms of this human event layer inside what we call this unified namespace, right? So unified namespace is something which is, again, come up over the last few years and has become quite I would say there's a trend, there's a movement, and there's some grassroots adoption taking place. Unified namespace isn't pushed by a large standards body. This isn't ISO or the IEC.
No.
This isn't some big foundation. And it's not something that came out of one of the tier one automation vendors. And we've got to credit a very brilliant person who also likes sitting in a dark room with crazy mood lighting. His name's Walker Reynolds. And Walker Reynolds, shout out to you, mate. Thank you for bringing us this thought leadership on unified namespace. Unified namespace really takes something which was inside a automation standard called ISA 95. which allows us to define a structured hierarchy or taxonomy where we can plug in machine data, right? So individual sensor readings, programmable logic controller data into some kind of organized hierarchy, which allows us to know where something is happening. And there's some, I think, key principles behind unified namespace, and one of them is that it is report by exception. And the other principle is that it's lightweight. So these are good things. These are things that also acknowledge that there are multiple ways. You know, we have different size hammers. We're not going to take the biggest hammer and make everything look like a nail. And so where we have machine events, which are structured around a particular site, a plant, particular area within the plant, particular production line in the plant, cells, machines, and then we have sensors, and then their actual readings. We can expand on this unified namespace to have synthetic events. So when I say about synthetic events are where I have calculated, where I'm taking multiple measurements, multiple events, if they're status alarms, and I can then turn that into a synthetic event. And I would see that this is where we would be able to extend and add to the unified namespace by inserting human events with vCon, with references to vCons. So effectively, we would then add out, and we would, for example, have our site, our area, our line. We would have a topic for maintenance, and then we would have topics for vCons, and then we would have different pieces that would be part of a vCon that would refer back to the actual vCon itself. Now, where some folks get it wrong with unified namespace, particularly those who build unified namespace implementations with MQTT, is you try to push all of your data through MQTT. And that's not a good thing. MQTT really is designed for small sized packets of data or envelopes that are not very large. It's not the right thing to use for real-time multimedia streaming. And I've seen some crazy attempts to do things like send, for example, base 64 encoded JPEG images, turning that into something that's MIME encoded that you put into a JSON document. But for the most part, a lot of the data, the payload that goes through MQTT in a unified namespace is either JSON documents, which again have a certain structure to them, or they could be SparkPub format, or they could be something else. And I think great unified namespace implementations will probably have a multiple and a heterogeneous range of different content or payload formats. So there's absolutely no reason why you could not convey the vCon, at least the JSON part of a vCon, inside my topic namespace that forms part of my UNS.
Yeah.
And again, the benefit of this is that for the very first time, we have machine and human context flows within the same namespace. And I think that that's pretty powerful.
I agree.
Okay. And then we can now subscribe into these. So it's not just about how we publish in, but it's all about who subscribes to it, right? And so we will have some algorithms and some machines and, context, and being able to bring that in through an MCP interface into some kind of AI LLM. And now this gives a very powerful, very complementary set of data and information that can be processed. And I think what we desire is having a context complete unified namespace.
Yeah.
Thomas, any thoughts on this or anything that's way offline? Because you're
No, not at all. And it's a really just another really great thread I think you're pulling together, which is this whole like semantic idea that why is it that meaning has to like stop at a boundary? And by just being able to say in general, here are the events that happen, and some of them are machine events, and some of them are people events. They're all really important events,
Yeah.
and why are we treating them any differently? Because they're just an event,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, total sense. Total sense.
awesome. Very cool. So I'm going to just spend a little bit of time on the cybersecurity piece because I think it is important. It is topical. It's top of mind for many end user, manufacturers, process industry, utilities, right? And there is obviously a key question is, doesn't this add risk? And it's perfectly normal to feel nervous about this. Okay. But in actual fact, this reduces risk. Okay. So most incidents are not caused by some nasty hacker outside. They're caused by misunderstandings, undocumented decisions, informal workarounds. So the way we bypass something, and then unshared advice from third-party vendors or contractors within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so we already know this within our cybersecurity frameworks that we have. And this is why when we look at standards like IEC 62443, we ask for and expect to have documented decisions and traceability and evidence to support those decisions. And so the problem is, though, is that these decisions happened in conversations that were never captured.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the beauty about vCons as a tool to improve cybersecurity posture and compliance is that we turn unmanaged human risk into governed operational evidence. And so when you apply that with good zones and conduits, which is the mechanism for segmenting infrastructure for cybersecurity in industrial automation and control systems, is that we can then set some rules, some governance rules to say that, listen, we're not going to be capturing this in, for example, safety instrumented systems. So in our safety zone, we're not going to be leveraging this, right? We're going to again, generate metadata only where it's appropriate, and we're going to be explicit on our information flows. And so again, by taking security by design and making it safe by design, we can implement this in alignment with the standard, but also enhance compliance to the standard. And I think this is very powerful where we're going with this. So if we think about this, all right, just to summarize, this is not about surveillance. It's not about monitoring. It's not about being a cop for workers. It's about building and strengthening and preserving institutional memory, finally. It's about having traceability on decision-making, and it's about enabling sustainable modernization, where we can finally remove the trauma of big lift and shift, rip and replace programs that happen because someone retired and we forgot or they never dumped their knowledge. And so we ended up with this amnesia. Okay. So if we look at just how this would work for incident analysis quickly. Okay. So I've got a machine event. So there's some, again, signal that's been measured, an event that's been generated. We have an operator call. So this could be between a field worker and a control room. This is the conversation. And then we've obviously got some action that's been taken in terms of updating a work order, right? And so this is where we end up with this enriched vCon, which has links to alarm IDs, the context of what asset this was related to, what were the prior actions, and what are the proposed fixes. And so now this allows us to leverage AI who can finally answer, well, what changed between the alarm and the fix? Who made the decision? Why was that decision made? And has this exact same sequence of events happened before?
Yeah.
And this is pretty powerful stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think we're just at the very beginning of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thomas.
Well, there's one thing I want to put in there again, because you're absolutely right. This is also something I see across a lot of industries, which is this for surveillance or for compliance? Is this a wrong step? And the fact of the matter is that in most places I go, we are not in compliance. Most places we go, we don't abide by the GDPR. In communications, you can't ask for your data or have it corrected or know how we processed it. It's not something you can do today. And so, it's easy and I understand why people do, and they ought to, right? One of the biggest, sayings of the IETF is mass surveillance is an attack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's how we treat it. And so this isn't about mass surveillance. But what this is about compliance to data rights, compliance to, or integrity around, is it a real collection? Did just the thing actually happened? And these are safety measures.
Yeah.
These are not, attack measures.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, where, there's clearly on the shop floor, on the factory floor, there's a temptation to, I think, maybe cheat or be dishonest about certain actions that are taken. And a lot of that is got to do with feeling, I would say, shame of, or again, feeling nervous about having consequences, right? The wrong type of consequences come back. But for the most part, in most industrial processes, we are safety conscious, right? We do want to make sure that the plant doesn't blow up. We don't want our colleagues to die. We don't want people to be, maimed and injured.
Yeah.
All right. And there is some solidarity there. So I think as long as this is clearly explained as a way of being able to enhance, integrity,
yeah,
and to continue to work with a high degree of integrity, right, that we're all right. This isn't about trying to spy on people who are, again, maybe slacking on the job. But I do understand, having spent a lot of time in the field, that folks out there in operational roles can sometimes feel a bit nervous about, having everything seen, that there's this panopticon right out there. And I think that, as long as we keep these principles in mind, we're good. Yeah. And Thomas, I think it's great that we have, I think, such a strong set of values in the Internet Engineering Task Force that are against mass surveillance.
Agree. 100%.
It's unhealthy for society.
Yep.
No. Right. Yep. Deep part of our culture.
Yeah, definitely. So, I could probably go on with a couple more slides and and again, these are just really some sort of thoughts as to, again, where this would fit with, again, semantic searching on finding, out, hey, how many conversations, or find all the conversations that happened involving this asset, this machine, right, during this particular time frame. And that's a great way of, again, being able to zoom into the why behind any event that may have reoccurred or may have occurred multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing that is going to get really powerful is when I want to automate root cause analysis. All right. Because doing root cause analysis can be very painful. It involves asking uncomfortable questions. It involves dealing with people that either are, how can I say, have memory holes of their own, because you know what? We don't necessarily recall with perfect clarity exactly what happened. Okay. Yeah. And some of it is because of stress as well. We're dealing with a lot of stress when things break down in production.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, spending a lot of time with maintenance people out there, I can see where the pressure can basically cause cracks in your ability to recall and to replay let's say, an anecdotal sequence of events. And when I'm doing RCA, right, I am sitting down, I'm trying to do an Ishikawa diagram, a fishbone diagram, to try and zoom in and say, okay, these were all the contributing factors. And finally, we can extract out the real underlying root cause. Okay. But with the link between machine data and conversations, this is absolutely going to become more automated.
Yeah.
Okay. And for me, another powerful plank of all of this, which is for me is super high value for an enterprise, is that you've now building evergreen training assets. Okay. Because you're preserving and you're continuing to you're continuing the process of maintaining and evolving institutional memory. So in other words, I'm baking continuity into my institutional memory. I now become evergreen. We talk about being sustainable today, right? Yeah. Sustaining something means that I'm extending its lifespan, right? I'm not necessarily replenishing or refreshing it. Nature, it's not really about sustaining. Nature is about being evergreen. It's about the renewal, the cycle of being perennial or annual in terms of how my life is going to be renewed. Okay. We've got different seasons. And you're going to have green on the trees, and then you're going to have leaves fall off, but life continues. And this is the process of renewal. So having evergreen training assets means that I'm building continuity into my knowledge transfer program, my mentoring, my apprenticeship schemes, the dialogue that happens between master and apprentice or between mentor and mentee. These are things that are going to, again, be augmented by having this access to contextualized knowledge that is both conversational as well as factual machine data.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful.
Yep, I agree.
100%.
So, if we want to look at business outcomes, faster troubleshooting, reducing repeated failure rates, we want to shorten the time for onboarding, okay, bringing people up to speed, getting them on the same page, getting them working together. All right. And in doing so, improving the posture to be compliant, to be able to have defensibility, right? Being able to say this is the evidence that we are showing, right, to prove that we're compliant. Okay. And I see as we move into this brand new, brave new world of digitized everything and industry 4.0, 5.0. I was in a lunch and learn session at the Computer Science Laboratory here in Grenoble yesterday, and they were talking about digital twins for industry. Yeah. And we're talking about industry 5.0. There was no mention of industry 4.0, right? So again, who really cares about generations or these different industrial revolutions in inverted commas? It's about continuous modernization and being able to, again, apply that in an evergreen way so that you are modern at every time. It makes the concept of legacy irrelevant, right? Or legacy is something that you transmit to the next generation. It's not this bad thing that it's obsolete crap that I need to get rid of, right? Your legacy is something that is part of your handover and natural cycle from generation to generation.
Yeah.
Thomas.
Yep. Isn't it amazing how what used to be what we tried to avoid now becomes something we kind of like run towards in a way, like all the information that's in the legacy, we'd run from it because it stuck us in old times and old places, and it really didn't it. But now it's a thing which if you think of it as an asset, think of it as information that's kind of push you forward. It really does, change how you view, and that's really true in software. It's true in the shop floor.
Yeah.
True in the company.
Yeah. 100%. So I think, what I'll just try and close out with is, a possible approach to building this as a knowledge fabric, and how, if you're watching this video and are an early adopter, or again, a either manufacturing, process industry, utility that is again serious about, and willing to step into uncharted waters and again try something as a pilot. So what would an ideal pilot program look like for you? And so again, it would be typically industries where there's a strong focus on reliability. So energy, pharmaceuticals. Again, if you're preparing to adopt and deploy UNS, or you're part of the way there, where you've been starting to build out some kind of machine data aggregation layer to unlock the opportunities between your manufacturing assets and your execution systems, and dipping the toe in the water with AI augmentation, right? And then, of course, the other one is if you are facing workplace transition issues, you've got a great crew change coming up within the next few years. You've got folks that are going to be retiring, and you need to, again, have that generational handover. And if you've got a clear roadmap to improve your cybersecurity posture, to actually build out an IEC 62443 culture and diffuse that across the organization, I think that this kind of pilot program is ideal for end user manufacturers, process industry, and utilities like you. So I would synthetically put out a 12-week pilot framework, which would allow us to go from discovery, setup, enrichment, and demonstration. And this would be a way of proving the concept.
Yeah.
And it's not about trying to boil the ocean. All right. The beauty about this is that we've got open standards. There's great open source software. And I think one of the calls to action is that we need more of us to contribute to open source projects. It's not enough to simply take open source as a free commons. It's about being part of the stewardship of this common set of building blocks. And so contribution, and it doesn't have to be developers submitting code and pull requests. It can simply be filing issues, creating wiki, adding to the documentation, adding to the examples and the reference deployments, and again, enriching that body of knowledge that makes up the entire open source community. This is powerful stuff because it means that we are all going to be using the same building blocks, but assembling Lego kit that is going to be unique for your enterprise.
Yeah.
All right. But start with just capturing a handful of conversations, publishing them into the unified namespace, making them searchable, making them governed, and making them useful. And when you have that, then you will be able to show how troubleshooting gets faster, how onboarding gets easier, how you reduce the pain of the audit process, where you now have to pull resources off the factory floor or the maintenance team to go and sit in the data room to be able to go pull files out. And I mean, if anyone's been through a compliance audit for pharmaceutical or medical device manufacturing, you know what I'm talking about. Other regulated industries, it's the same. So you really want to be able to, again, take that pain, remove that pain of audits. And again, stop your AI hallucinating so badly, okay? Because it is going to hallucinate. It's going to try and fill in the gaps. So plug those gaps with real conversations, with real human interaction, and feed that so that the model, again, can be more sane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an excellent point.
So anyway, if there's one idea I'd like to leave everyone with, is that human knowledge is no longer a soft issue. It's operational infrastructure.
Yeah, excellent point. And we're seeing that come out in so many different industries at this very moment in time. I mean, here in telecom, we're seeing massive layoffs, the loss of tacit knowledge around a whole host of processes. It's just disappearing out of the door.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's very Christmassy, your background, Thomas.
Yeah, I decided to go to Tokyo for Christmas. They do Christmas great. I'll tell you,
It's a super cool background. Really awesome. Yeah. Good. So thank you, Alan, for the opportunity for sharing a few crazy thoughts just before Christmas.
And you did an excellent job. Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm going to get this all packaged up and posted as soon as possible. Okay?
All right. Marvelous. Well, thank you very, very much. And thank you.